Hantavirus. That's right, Hantavirus. It's a new virus that's been released from China. We're going to get into that right now. Before we do, please make sure you hit that subscribe and share this video with all your friends and family so they can be informed. So, when I first started making these videos on these viruses, my background for investigation type services, I started my research and investigation and found that I had quite a bit of talent for it. When my wife and me invested into a stock portfolio, the FBI, the SEC, Security Exchange Commission, Homeland Security, and all 101 senators were involved with myself, and I've spoken to Florida Governor and Senator John McCain over the phone regarding our problem before with our investment. What it was and I'll get into the virus stuff here in a minute, just giving you a little background on me. When they took all of our money, long story short, the company that we invested in was a large satellite out in space providing cellular and data communications to cell phones using picocells, microcells, and macrocells for telecommunications. And so the company had actually said, well, we're going to go bankrupt. Prior to them going bankrupt, the CEO of the company went on Fox News and told everybody that it would be a great idea to go and invest right now because the stock would only continue to, as his hand signal said, continue to go up. And so he falsified information, and he promoted and pumped the stock of his company on national television. The company then said that we're going to go bankrupt. I think it was about 60 days thereafter he went on Fox, said that they're now going to go bankrupt. But 60 days prior to that, they were doing so good, and they just continued to, as the CEO said, continue to go up. And so I found that that was a scam, and that opened up a big thing for me. So I traced the company all the way back to Enron Corporation, the largest fraudulent company organization in the world for scamming people. Bernie Madoff was involved in that. The financial planning company called Blackstone Financial Advisory Group was part of that group. I discovered that. I discovered a lot of things for our investigation. Once I provided the information to the FBI investigative attorney had actually asked me if I had previously worked for the FBI or worked at an investigation firm. And I said, no, I just gather all the facts that I can, and I provide the truth. And so he says, you've done an amazing job. And they actually said that if I ever need a job, that I should start to call them. Haven't really needed a job since then. I kind of like what I do. Other than that, long story short, the company hired 20 attorneys to actually kick all the investors out. They took hundreds of millions of dollars from the investors, and they falsified the total value of the stock of the company. So now, after I've done all that research, now I can focus my time and research on this coronavirus. What I found, and I find this to be very, very true, and what sparked the intentions of my personal investigation on this was a book. You may have seen it go viral, actually. It was called The Eyes of Darkness by Dean Koontz. Now, even though it was a fictional story, I had to put the pieces together to the point where reality and not reality. One of the things that I had to find was that some of the stories in the virus matched up to the virus that we have now. The stories about how they were concealing it and what they were doing with this virus, and how they were unable to stop it, and its total its nature and function, and how this virus actually worked. It would actually fill up fluid inside your lungs, suppressing your autoimmune system, and then your respiratory problems, so you wouldn't be able to breathe. And so you would need to have ventilators to be able to breathe. So when I found this virus, it was actually located in a stage 4 bioweapons facility. Stage 4 bioweapons facilities actually contain the world's most dangerous and lethal bioagents, and I mean, it's serious viruses all over the world that can be very, very deadly. And poor containment, or a I mean, you got to think of like, if you've ever seen the movie or the cartoon called Pinky and the Brain. In this, real quick, a little brief story about Pinky and the Brain. You have this one kind of an idiot mouse who is being coached by this very intelligent mouse. And the intelligent mouse has a mindset of world and global dominance. Now, the kind of the dumb one wants to please and make happy the intelligent one. That's exactly what story we got here. You got a lot of dumb people going on out there spreading this virus, and they want to make the Chinese government happy, even if it means that they have to die for making, pleasing their president, Xi Jinping, who is basically wanting to be seen as a god in China. He wants to be seen as a god in China. That's what he wants. He's also rewriting the Bible. That's right. The Bible that talks about Jesus Christ and stuff like that as the only Son of God and Son of Savior of man. That Bible. He wants to rewrite that Bible. You can Google those facts also. The story that we're going to have today is going to be a story about the coronavirus and the new Hantavirus, which has already killed someone in Wuhan, close to Wuhan, China. And so the virus, they say, actually comes from a rat. But going deeper into the bucket list, we're going to find out that the Hantavirus was actually a form of biological weapons. Not only that, it actually was stored, the Hantavirus was stored inside of it was actually used in Vietnam War, where 3,000 soldiers actually got infected with this virus. What a coincidence, No, not at all. Quite the opposite of a coincidence. More purposefully administered. So we're going to get into that. When I'm talking about these viruses, it's really best, and you're trying to investigate, you really need to have a very open mindset, okay? Taking in your own opinions from like CNN, Democratic News, and stuff like that. Forget all the brainwashing media out there. This is a time to use your best ability for common sense, connecting dots, because this is an investigation that's going on, not just with myself, but also with the FBI and several agencies across the world are investigating China's spread of this biological weapon. And so this is what we got. So please make sure that you have a very open mindset as to watching this video, that when you do watch it, you keep a very open mindset and you are able to connect the dots. Here we go. Please make sure you hit that subscribe down below and share this video with all your friends and family. Thanks for watching. Until next time, The Last Viking TV is coming up here. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to The Last Viking TV. Now, before we get into this, please drop a subscribe down below and share the video with all your friends and family. Here we go. According to Business Insider, found on Google, 6 deadly bioweapons the U.S. Army has faced since 1969. A U.S. soldier examines a blood sample during a clinical infectious disease course at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, September 10th, 2015. Marine Corps Corporal Stephen Fox. Few things are more frightening as a weapon than infectious diseases. The idea of creeping invisible death that will probably make you bleed from places you'd rather not is much worse than the idea of getting shot. In this veteran's opinion, anyway. In any case, it's a good thing that the U.S. Army has its Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases to counteract the development or weaponization of superbugs and viruses for use against the United States. Since the 1960s, U.S. MRID has been on the front lines of disease research and testing in order to keep the communist terrorist Mother Nature or anyone else from using biological weapons against America and its allies. It's only one of the only places in America that can handle biosafety level 4 viruses, the highest levels of safety containment for some of the world's deadliest diseases and toxins. So we're going to go back to that. So biosafety level 4 viruses are containing the world's most powerful and most infectious and deadly viruses. Okay. The biological weapons facility located in Wuhan, China, is also a level 4 virology lab, where it holds the now known COVID-19. This did not come from a bat. They've been eating bats and animals for hundreds of years. I've said it many, many times in all my videos. I've had people say that that some of the information that I put out there is inaccurate because it comes from animals. Well, if you have the ability to, for 1 second, think outside the color crayon box, you would be able to maybe possibly comprehend the impossible facts that China would ever do something like that on their own people. If you drink enough unicorn juice, you would probably think that. But fact remains, reality is China is not all lovey-lovey, okay? They're not, okay? So stop thinking about that. Here are just a few of the menaces U.S. MRID, this is the United States Stage 4, Level 4 biosafety facility, U.S. MRID, is helping to nip in the bud before they get out of hand or into the wrong hands. They definitely got into the wrong hands, okay? We've had several, I'll go into the next video here after this clip here, where I'll show you several of these people that were working at these facilities had already gotten arrested for transporting these viruses that they're talking about listed in this list here from the U.S. to the wrong hands, okay? Into the wrong hands, which was China. Several scientists that were working at these facilities have already been arrested by the FBI because they were transporting these viruses back to China, so China could release it on the world and main target America. It is not unthinkable that China would actually, I mean, they've paid these spy scientists from China to come and collect our viruses and bring them back over there for biological weapons, it would not be unthinkable that China would actually infect its own people, send those agents as a communist type of act to, basically send them, hurry up, go over to America, infect them all, spit on everything, cough on everything, do this, do that, lick taco shells and stuff like that. I mean, people do some of the most evil and terrible things. And what's driving this force? Money and politics. Okay? China's money and China's politics are driving this biological weapon further into the United States and further into other portions of the world. This is all amid the fact of the trade war that happened prior to the biological war that we're in right now. So the first virus is called the Q fever. In the Defense Secretary Mark Esper tours the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute and Infectious Diseases with Army Brig General Mike Talley, Commanding General of U.S. Army Medical Research Development Command at Fort Detrick in Maryland, March 17, 2020. In the 1950s, the precursor to U.S. MRID, the Army Medical Unit conducted tests on human volunteers to determine the cause of Q fever, an aggressive pneumonia first seen in Australian slaughterhouses. It was believed that the agent could be used as a biological weapon. Long story short, they were right. Only instead of fighting it, they weaponized it. The United States created more than 5,000 gallons of Q fever because it was easily dispersed, could survive up to 60 days on some surfaces, and requires only one bacilli to infect someone. The catch was destroyed after the U.S. signed the UN Biological Weapons Convention of 1972. I'm sorry, sometimes when I'm reading, it's my screen. Your screen is probably going to be clear because I'll enhance the quality of the video, but my portion of the video kind of gets, on screen recording, gets blurry. Botulism. During the first Gulf War, Saddam Hussein's Iraq was known to have produced more than 19,000 gallons of botulinum toxin. The threat against the American troops in Operation Desert Shields and Desert Storm was very real. It was up to U.S. MRID to protect Allied forces in case Saddam used the weapon against coalition troops. Iraq had an estimated 100 R-400 bombs loaded with the toxin. Botulism is natural. So they were putting this virus inside of bombs. So once it explodes, then it would just infect everyone. Botulism is naturally rare, but in a botulism weapon, it can be extremely lethal, causing paralysis, death, and long-term hospital care for those who survive. Just 1 gram of botulinum toxin is enough to kill 1 million people when inhaled. Just 1 gram of that toxin. Oh my gosh, look at this. Look at this. What? This is on the list? I can't believe it. No, I thought they said that you can't get this virus from animals to humans, and humans can't pass it on to humans. What? Have we been getting lied to? No way. We got to believe everything that the scientists and Democratic Party says, right? Wrong. Hantavirus. This is it. A micrographic study of the liver tissue from a hantavirus pulmonary syndrome patient. When the U.S. Army saw 3,000 troops in Korea War suddenly come down with an extremely virulent hemorrhagic fever, pronounce that right. Officials assumed it was a biological weapon. No evidence of a weapon was ever found, but they discovered a family of diseases called Bunnyaviridae. 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 Hantavirus is the common name for Hantavirus hemorrhagic fever with renal syndrome, a condition with 50% mortality rate. Though no vaccine exists, the researchers at US Merid recently identified a key receptor that could lead to a treatment. Wow. Anthrax. Anthrax is probably number one on the list of most likely biological agents because it's naturally found in soil. It easily produced and lasts for a long time once dispersed. It's odorless, colorless, and tasteless, meaning it's bad news as a sneaky weapon of mass destruction. U.S. Merid's work against anthrax includes an effective FDA-approved field test for identifying anthrax, as well as an advanced vaccine that could protect people from inhalation. Anthrax, and deadliest form of the disease, and the one most likely to be used as a biological agent. So I just want to go through this list and see if we can find any other viruses here. So no, that's about it, 6 of them. So going back to this hantavirus, when the U.S. Army saw 3,000 troops in Korea War suddenly come down with the extreme virulent hemorrhagic fever, the officials assumed it was a biological weapon. No evidence of a weapon was ever found, but they discovered a family of diseases called Bunnyaviridae. Hantavirus is a common name for Hanta hemorrhagic fever with renal syndrome. So though there are no vaccines, the mortality rate for that is 50%. The U.S. researchers at U.S. Merid recently identified a key receptor that could lead to a treatment. So, yeah, it's on this list of biological weapons.
Posed by Chinese economic espionage and research theft in the United States. First, the arrest today of a Harvard University professor for lying about his participation in a Chinese foreign recruitment program. Second, this morning we have unsealed a separate indictment of a Chinese national working as a scientific researcher at Boston University who failed to mention on her visa application that she is also a lieutenant with the People's Liberation Army. Finally, this office has indicted another Chinese national for trying to smuggle vials of biological material out of the United States to China and lying about it to federal investigators. That defendant, whose entry to the United States had been sponsored by Harvard University, was a cancer researcher at a lab at the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. So, this morning, the FBI arrested Dr. Charles Lieber, the chair of the Department of Chemistry and Chemical Biology at Harvard University, for making false statements regarding his involvement in China's Thousand Talents Plan and his affiliation with the Wuhan University of Technology. The complaint alleges that Dr. Lieber signed a contract with the Chinese university in Wuhan and was paid up to $50,000 per month, plus up to $158,000 in living expenses, and awarded more than $1.5 million to set up a research lab at the Chinese school and work there on researching nanotechnology. Lieber also joined China's Thousand Talents Plan, according to the complaint, a Chinese government-run program designed to entice scientists and researchers in the United States to share their research expertise with China. At the same time, Dr. Lieber was receiving U.S. grant funds from the Department of Defense and the National Institutes of Health. National Institutes of Health spends up to $39 million a year funding medical research in the United States. Those programs required Dr. Lieber to disclose if he was working with, including receiving funding from, any foreign power. When questioned, Lieber hid his involvement with the Chinese entities, including specifically disavowing any connection to China's Thousand Talents plan. Meanwhile, based on the complaint, it appears that China paid Lieber hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years for his involvement with the Chinese entities and for his work on research for Chinese gain. Also today, a federal grand jury indicted Yanqing Ye, a Chinese national, with lying on her J-1 visa application, making false statements to Customs and Border Protection, conspiracy, and being an unregistered agent of the People's Republic of China. According to court documents, Ye is a lieutenant in the People's Liberation Army, but she concealed her military connections while employed as a researcher at Boston University's Department of Physics, Chemistry, and Biomedical Engineering Center for Polymer Studies. The indictment alleges that a colonel in the People's Liberation Army and other military officers from the Chinese National University of Defense Technology gave Ye numerous assignments while she was in the United States, such as conducting research, assessing U.S. military websites, and sending documents and information back to China. In April 2019, Ye was questioned by customs officers at Logan Airport on her way to China. According to the indictment, she lied about her involvement with Chinese military projects. A border search of her electronic devices showed that Ye had compiled information for the People's Liberation Army about 2 U.S. residents with expertise in robotics and computer science. Lastly, last week this office indicted Zheng Zhaozhong, a Chinese national sponsored by Harvard University who was doing cancer research at the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. Zheng was charged with attempting to smuggle to Beijing vials of biological material, along with other research materials that he had stolen from the lab at the Beth Israel, where Zheng was working on cancer cell research. Before he boarded his flight, customs officers discovered 21 vials of biological material in a sock in his baggage. When confronted by the officers, Zheng initially lied and said he was not traveling with any biological or research materials. Chemistry, nanotechnology, polymer studies, robotics, computer science, biomedical research. This is not an accident or a coincidence. This is a small sample of China's ongoing campaign to siphon off American technology and know-how for Chinese gain. Recently, Attorney General Barr referred to China as this country's primary rival. Similarly, FBI Director Chris Wray recently told Congress that right now there is no country that poses a greater counterintelligence threat to the United States than China. Through the use of not only traditional intelligence officers, but academics, researchers, its own private citizens, China is engaged in a massive, long-term campaign to steal U.S. research and technology for its own uses. As demonstrated by these cases, on the academic side, the Chinese government uses partnerships and exchanges with U.S. schools and research institutions to access cutting-edge research and equipment. Obviously, most visiting Chinese academics and researchers are here to work in good faith in U.S. institutions, but some of them are not. Some number have been incentivized by the Chinese government, either through the use of money or other means, to gather U.S. research and smuggle it back to China. Because of the sheer scope of this threat, a year ago the Attorney General created the China Initiative at the U.S. Department of Justice, designed to prioritize and aggressively prosecute Chinese economic espionage and theft of intellectual property. The cases we are announcing today are part of that effort. Boston is an especially attractive target for this kind of exploitation, and universities and research institutions and tech companies in this area must become sensitized to this threat. Our community benefits greatly from the diversity and talent of international visitors.
There has been more concern, or more public concern, about hantavirus, given that we've had some cases of infection from patients who have been traveling recently in Yosemite Valley. In particular, these cases were thought to come from exposure to deer mice while they were staying at Curry Village which is at the floor at the base of the Yosemite Valley. Hantavirus overall is a very, very rare infection spread by exposure to the urine or droppings of deer mice. And deer mice are wild mice that typically exist in rural areas or at higher elevations. In California, they're commonly found in the eastern Sierras. And whereas the hantavirus may infect the deer mice do not get sick from the hantavirus. Humans that initially get infected from hantavirus, the incubation period for the disease is about 1 to 5 weeks. Typically, they begin with very vague flu-like symptoms. This includes fever, fatigue, muscle aches and pains, and sometimes abdominal pain. Then the disease can progress, meaning that they'll then develop cough and shortness of breath, and eventually, with hantavirus infection, it develops into a life-threatening pneumonia. The disease is very severe, and about 38% of patients who get the disease will eventually die from the illness. Humans are not reservoir for hantavirus infection. They can get infected by exposure to deer mice, but they're unable to pass. They do not pass the disease from human to human. There have been no documented cases of human-to-human transmission from hantavirus infection. Because the most common route of transmission for hantavirus appears to be inhalation or direct inhalation of contaminated dust from contaminated urine and other secretions of the rodent, there are some measures that can be taken to prevent infection. Probably the most important general measure is to avoid contact with wild rodents, and this would involve carefully cleaning cabins in the proper way and cleaning cabins to prevent rodents from making the living areas inhospitable to rodents. Another thing that can be done would be to keep basically all food kind of carefully packaged or wrapped away where it's inaccessible to rodents, as well as potentially taking steps to avoid inhaling or staying away from regions where you might be able to inhale contaminated dust from rodents. Because there have been no documented cases of human-to-human transmission, and because it's been thought that hantavirus is not contagious and cannot be spread from person to person, the cases have almost exclusively, the outbreaks have been very, very isolated. Therefore, I think that the probability that there will be a large-scale, wide-scale outbreak is quite remote. If you're worried about having been potentially exposed to hantavirus, if you've been camping recently, if potentially you've been in musty cabins or campsites or other areas where you may have been exposed to the urine or droppings of rodents or excretions of rodents, or you may have inhaled particles, it's very, very important that if you develop symptoms that you seek medical attention immediately. And this is because it's been shown that the earlier you get medical care, the better the outcomes from the disease, and the more likely it is that you'll be able to survive this very dangerous illness.
Beaucoup de nourriture disponible. Et donc, la chose la plus importante à faire, c'est avant tout de les priver de nourriture, priver d'accès à la nourriture. C'est pour ça qu'on change les modèles de poubelles pour avoir des nouvelles poubelles qui ont un coffrage qui résiste aux rats.
Ça, c'est donc une carte de chaleur.
La faillite, elle est aussi au niveau des moyens, des compétences mises par la ville pour vraiment lutter contre ce phénomène. Et c'est le sujet sur lequel moi je me suis positionné très clairement en créant une brigade citoyenne, en créant un site internet pour permettre aux habitants de nous signaler précisément là où ils ont vu un certain nombre de rongeurs et là où la ville doit agir.
As the world rallies against the COVID-19 pandemic, news from China involving another virus has caused alarm in some parts. According to the report from the Chinese province Yunnan, a man died a few days after he had been tested positive for the Hantavirus, Hanta virus, Hanta. He had been traveling back to Shandong province from work. According to a tweet from China's Global Times, 32 more people who were on the bus were also tested, but the results of their tests were not clear. The news has caused some panic on social media, as people speculate about the origins of the virus, drawing parallels with coronavirus, which had its first cases in Wuhan, China. But hantavirus is nothing like the latest strain of the coronavirus. Let's look at the facts. What is hantavirus? Hantaviruses are viruses spread by rodents. There are several strains of hantavirus which can cause an illness, known as hantapulmonary syndrome, HPS, a respiratory illness that starts with flu-like symptoms. How does this virus spread? Hantaviruses only spread through rodents to humans and can't be spread from human to human. That makes no sense at all. Once it's spread from animal to human can spread it. But then it says human to humans cannot spread it. So if one human gets it, then it would just stop. That human couldn't spread it to anyone else. Doesn't that sound like a load of... It is therefore only possible to get sick from this virus directly from a rat infestation. Tiny particles of rat droppings, urine, or saliva can be inhaled when stirred up in the air or when directly handled with bare hands and then touching the face and nose. Wow, very similar to coronavirus. The World Health Organization says cases of human hantavirus infection usually occur in rural areas, forest fields, and farms, where sylvatic rodents hosting the virus might be found. Humans can also be infected with the hantavirus when bitten by a rodent. The following activities can put people at risk for HPS. Improper cleaning of rodent infestations and nests. Cleaning and any shed, cabin, garbage, or building that was closed for a prolonged period of time. Working in areas where there might be rodent infestations, such as barns. It is therefore best to avoid the risk by wearing a protective mask when cleaning rodent nests and droppings up with a broom to avoid inhaling the particles stirred up in the air. What are the symptoms of HPS? When you get infected with a hantavirus, you might suffer from HPS signs, and symptoms may include fever and chills, headaches and body aches, abdominal cramps. After 10 days, fluid may start to form inside the lungs, just like the coronavirus, which may cause fatal respiratory failure, just like the coronavirus. Were there any outbreaks in the past? According to the World Health Organization, we already know they're full of crock. The following outbreaks were listed. March 2nd in the Republic of Panama, September 12th in Yosemite Park, as U.S. January 2019, the Republic of Panama and Argentina Republic. And so, yeah, there's a crazy lady allowing a rat to actually go inside of her mouth. So, yeah, I mean, the rat's just checking it out. It's a pet rat, but she's putting it in her mouth. People do some of the stupidest things, and that's why we have these things. But so this is another excuse as to, they blamed first one on bats, now they're blaming it on rats, and this is according to the the deceitful and corrupt Chinese media that is controlled by the Chinese government. So once the Chinese government controls the media, they control everything. Unfortunately, with the United States, the media controls the media, and the media gets to say whatever they want to say, and there's no accountability for it. So, yeah. But you know, I mean, either way, it's both corrupt. You got news media outlets that are being forced to say one thing, and then on the other hand, you got the American media that is basically saying stuff that have all their own agendas, so they're lying to the public about a lot of things. Specifically, like CNN News, they lie about everything, and some other news outlets. But yeah, I mean, so it's getting out of control.